My passion is serving humanity, and my passion is serving humanity through the power of love. I think
Mm,
that's just what right now I would, not to give the cliche Matt Kahn answer, but I think, what comes up is, really in my life, when I wake up every morning between each breath, naturally, where is my focus? My focus is on serving humanity.
mm,
And I'm always excited about what's the most loving way to create more clarity or a breakthrough around any degree of spiritual teaching.
mm.
How do we make this point? How do we move humanity into this level of awareness? But how do we do it in the most loving way?
Yep.
So again, not again. I see your cliche question, and I meet it with a cliche Matt Kahn answer and say,
You,
I'm passionate about serving humanity through the power of love. And on a personal level, I am passionate about cooking.
mm. Yeah,
So,
I was about to say there's got to be something else in there that's like off the rails for Matt. And yes, cooking. I was going to say donuts or make up some food if you didn't say it, but you beat me to it. Um, it's cliche, but it's so true. My favorite quote is I did a little remix of a John Lennon quote, and I say, "Love is the answer now." What was the
oh,
question? And it's cliche and it's true. And of course, as the universe would do with having you on today, I often will quote your "whatever arises, love that"
yeah,
brilliant quote
thank you.
and book. And as the universe tends to do with its synchronicity, this morning I don't know if are you familiar with, I'd imagine you are, Notes from the Universe,
Yeah.
Mike Dooley. I've been getting those for, I don't know, 15 years or something. And today it caught my attention and I read it, and it was a very short one, and it was perfect right before I jump on with you. It was, "Love even more, Brandon. Everything else is resistance. Love love the universe." And then it
Yeah.
says, he always has a little PS, says, "Do this, Brandon, moment by moment, circumstance by circumstance, player by player, and ye shall be raised to heights unimagined." But
Wow.
I thought it was a particularly good one. And of course, very timely as I'm about to jump on with you. Everything else is resistance.
Mm,
Like, really cool, simple way to just distill it down. Do you
yeah.
agree?
Well, and I would say just because I think that every teaching needs to be challenged, because that's how we all up level each other. And,
Mm-hmm.
that's been taught for so many years that, you're either loving or you're resisting.
Mm-hmm.
And I would personally challenge that just in the name of growth and perspective and awareness, because,
Okay.
and here's how I would check my math, just as
Mm-hmm.
I look at all teachings like a strategy of chess, and this is a chessboard. So, okay, if we present to people or anyone, or if you assume to yourself that you're either loving or resisting, does that, well, first of all, is that actually true? That if you're not in a state of loving something, you're in a state of, I must be resisting it.
Mm.
And is that actually how we get into alignment with love, or does that create a new model for hypervigilance to make love the goal for the ego to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at that and I go, I see on the surface the intention behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if someone says, well, I don't feel loved by my partner or my family, they must be resisting, or are they processing hurt and pain and trauma? And so I really look at that and I go, I think I appreciate the spirit of that.
Yep.
But what I would say, and here's what I would say, just to challenge that
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
name
Yeah, I
of
love this. I love this.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I would say, well, let's look at resistance for an example.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that resistance is a human way to overlook divine timing. And here's what I mean
Mm.
by that.
Mm.
So let's say you decide, Brandon, that you are going to be more loving today.
Mm-hmm.
And you've decided you're going to love each person more than you ever have in your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And you find yourself forgetting, getting distracted, and not able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, you conclude, I think I'm still in a state of resistance because I intended to love and I didn't measure up to the way I intended. Now, from a quantum perspective, the universe would say, now, Brandon, you're interpreting this as resistance. You set your intention to be more loving, but by the quantum field and by divine timing, you're going to take 72 hours to process that intention before it actually drops in. So, actually, I believe that the man made interpretation of resistance, which is what I think resistance is often a man made human interpretation of the time it takes for intention to coalesce with divine timing, or the notion that, for example, a person who decides I'm going to do something and then starts a goal and then they think they sabotage themselves. Well, are they sabotaging themselves? Do they have the power to interrupt divine flow? Or is it by the perfection of divine timing that someone starts and stops something just to become aware of the way they blame themselves and criticize themselves? And then by healing that pattern of criticism, they're then ready to do the thing they were always meant to do. So I think if we look at this, we open up the spectrum of possibility to say there are goals, there are achievements, there are reasons why we do things, there are reasons why we don't. But I think that when we have conversations, we have to have it in the presence of divine timing and not just make it up to each person has the weight of their destiny on their shoulders. And if they're not loving, they must be resisting. I think it's actually something that perspective wise falls apart as our heart really opens in an authentic way.
And I love this share. And
Yeah.
really what I'm hearing is like, look, there's I think of my own romantic relationship, my partner, which of course has stimulated more growth than anything in my life, particularly the one I'm in now for the last 4.5 years. And a lot of times, it's like, okay, something intense energetically has happened between us or what have you. And then there's a processing time. Like I need time to integrate and process and process this happening, this information, this energetic information. And as opposed to, like judging it as like, oh, I'm resistance in this moment. Therefore the process itself is a problem. And I should be feeling like, just like heart blasted open. And so I actually really hear and feel what you're saying with that. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, by the way, if there is such thing as resistance, I think really resistance could only exist in resistance to a truth that someone sees but doesn't want to admit. So, like, for example, if we're talking to someone about truth and we or they were to say, that just can't be, meaning they're seeing the truth, but to accept the truth would be the end of the world they're holding together psychologically. So I would say if there is something true to resistance, it is someone at a place in their journey where they are threatened by a level of truth that threatens to dissolve the perspective of the world that they hold together as a coping skill. And when I see this in people, whether it's someone I've ever worked with or a family member, if I see someone who is trying to deny a truth because it threatens their worldview, I can feel that that is bringing up in their nervous system an actual threat. And so for me, instead of thinking or saying, well, you're clearly resisting, because now I'm meeting someone in a trauma response and I'm adding on a lack of support. And so I think we're at a time in history, I believe, where we can determine the truth of our own experience. We accept that people are as truthful or as in denial as they're safe to do so. We have to be informed to decide how close do I let someone into my life if that's the case. Right. But at the same time, I think as spiritual beings, I think it's time that we stop blaming ourselves for what is the course of divine timing. For example, if we were watching a movie and we saw a character that we knew was probably going to end up with their beloved by the end of the movie, And in
Mm-hmm.
act two, they're questioning, they're not sure, they even break up for a minute of time. We're not going to sit there and throw popcorn at the screen and going, stop resisting. We
Right,
know
right,
it's just what happens in act two, and we know in act
right,
three, there's going to be a resolution. And
right.
so I think in the same way, what would happen if we started to observe our lives with the same rules that we do with movies? Obviously, in life, we have choices to
Mm-hmm.
make, so we have to be active. But what if we watched from within the movie of our life and we said, setting the intention might be the beginning of act two. Maybe it's
Mm,
fulfilled in act three, but what if I
right.
respected the fabric of time instead of
Mm-hmm.
constantly, like
Mm,
technology, needing things in 3 seconds?
yeah.
What if we actually saw that consciousness was a
Mm,
higher technology of the planet? It just takes time on purpose for what it fosters and triggers within us and our growth.